All right, let's dive into the social foundations of curriculum. We're talking about all those invisible forces that secretly shape everything we learn in school.
So, what if the most important lessons you learned in school weren't in any textbooks? I mean, really think about that for a second. You probably remember the algebra, the history lessons, sure. But what about all those unwritten rules, those social lessons? That's what we're digging into, how the world outside the classroom ends up shaping literally everything that happens inside it.
And that leads us to this huge central idea. Schools don't really drive society forward. They're more like a mirror. A curriculum isn't some blueprint for the future. It's a reflection of who we are right now. It's an institution that's, built by society for society.
Okay, so let's start there with that big picture. We're going to zoom all the way out and look at this really deep, almost invisible link between a culture and how it decides to teach its kids.
And what's so fascinating about this is how it totally reframes what school is even for. It's not just about, cramming facts into your head. It's about transferring a whole culture. All of society's deepest values, its beliefs, its unspoken rules, they all get passed down to the next generation, a lot of the time without a single word being written on a blackboard.
This whole process ends up creating something that social scientists have a name for, a modal personality. Now, this doesn't mean everyone is a carbon copy. Of course not. But all these shared experiences, from how you're raised to how you're taught in school, they kind of sand down our individual edges and create this common psychological profile for a society. And this quote from Margaret Mead, it just nails this point perfectly. She pointed out that this American ideal of unlimited opportunity actually creates this really unique kind of pressure, right? In a lot of other cultures, if you don't succeed, maybe you blame fate or the government, but in the US, the cultural script says, nope, it's on you. You blame yourself. That right there, that is the modal personality in action, and you better believe the school system helps shape it.
Okay, so we've been way up high looking at society. Now let's zoom in, like way in. We're going to leave that abstract idea behind and drop right into the chaotic, super real world of the school playground. Because let me tell you, there's a whole other curriculum being taught there. Just listen to this. This is a kid describing a game on the playground. It's totally raw, unfiltered, and wow, it just pulls back the curtain on this incredibly complex social world that kids create for themselves. No teacher is assigning this lesson. This is the hidden curriculum, the one taught by the peer group, where kids are really learning about rules and relationships and power.
Now, think about that wild playground energy, and then contrast it with the culture inside the classroom. It's like two different planets. Inside, the values are almost the exact opposite. You're taught this whole moral code that's all about being patient, conforming, being passive, and get this, the very thing that's valued on the playground, cooperation, helping a friend. Well, in the classroom, that can be labeled a school crime. We call it cheating. And kids have to navigate these two totally conflicting social worlds every single day.
All right, let's zoom in one more step. We've been to the playground, now let's open up the textbook. How does the official, written-down curriculum get twisted and shaped by these exact same social forces? Let's take a look at the famous Australian outlaw, Ned Kelly. Who was he? Was he a villain, a hero to the working class, a rebel for Irish independence? While the truth is, the answer completely depends on the social and cultural lens you're looking through. A textbook written from one perspective might call him a murderous criminal. Another, focusing on class struggle, sees a hero. A third, focused on ethnic identity, sees a symbol of resistance. It's a perfect example of how history is never just a list of facts. It's always a story, and society always gets to decide who the hero is. And this gets us to the really crucial point here. If you want to understand any curriculum, you have to ask yourself, why did this version of the story seem reasonable to the people who wrote it? What were their values? What did they believe? What were their blind spots? Because at the end of the day, a curriculum is basically a historical artifact. It's a fossil of the society that made it.
Okay, so let's start to zoom back out. Because right now, our society is going through some massive, foundational shifts. And they are forcing us to rethink the entire idea of what a curriculum should even be.
We're in the middle of this huge shift, moving from what's called modernism to postmodernism. The modernist view, which is, by the way, the philosophy that built our current school system, it saw knowledge kind of like a factory. You put in the parts, you follow the instructions, and you get a standardized product out the other end. There was always one right answer. But postmodernism, it sees knowledge more like a giant, messy conversation, or maybe like the internet. It's diverse. There are tons of different truths, all existing at once. It says a curriculum isn't a finished product. It's an ongoing discussion that has to include all sorts of different viewpoints.
And you can see this big shift happening in our own homes, too. For decades, the whole school curriculum was basically designed with one family in mind, the stable, two-parent nuclear family. But today, that's just one of many, many different family structures out there. And all that new diversity really challenges the old foundational assumptions that our schools were built on.
All right, let's complete that zoom out. We've talked about the shift in philosophy, the shift in the family, but the biggest earthquake shaking things up? It's technology. So what in the world do these huge changes mean for the future of learning?
We're now living in what people call a post-industrial society. And what that really means is that the main source of power and production isn't factories and physical stuff anymore. It's information. It's bits and bytes. In this new world, knowledge has become the ultimate currency.
Okay, get ready for this number. 72 days. By 2020, the projection was that the total amount of organized human knowledge would double every 72 days. Just let that sink in. How on earth can a textbook that's printed once a year even pretend to keep up with that? The scale of this change is it's mind-blowing.
The media theorist Neil Postman had this absolutely perfect way of explaining this. He said that technological change isn't additive, it's ecological. What he meant was a new technology isn't just one more tool you throw in the toolbox. No, it changes the entire ecosystem. It's like dropping a new species of fish into a pond. You don't just get one more fish. The water changes, the plants change, the insects change, everything changes.
So what does this new technological ecosystem mean for our schools? Well, it means everything has to shift, radically. Control starts to move from the teacher to the student. Learning itself moves away from the artificial bubble of the classroom and toward authentic, real-world problems. The whole goal isn't to cover a checklist of topics anymore. It's to help students learn how to discover knowledge for themselves. Why? Because in this new world, knowledge is changing constantly, and it's accessible to literally everyone everywhere.
And this all leads us to maybe the single most important takeaway of all. The very definition of what it means to be an educated person has fundamentally changed. In a world with infinite, constantly changing information, just knowing a bunch of facts is basically obsolete. The most crucial skill you can have now, it's learning how to learn and how to unlearn and relearn.
So we're left with this absolutely massive question. Our schools were built to be a mirror of a stable, industrial, modern society. But that society is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So how do we design a curriculum for the world we actually live in? A world of constant change, a world where the goal isn't just to know things, but to create new things. That right there is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity facing education today.